As you know, this is artistic expression in Afghanistan, perspectives from scholars at risk. What we have here are three people who are artivist, activist, academic, who are going to talk about this issue from their different perspectives. And before I introduce them and I introduce our moderator, I just want to take a moment to say, one of the organizations which we should recognize today is Scholars at Risk. Scholars at Risk has brought, I believe it's over 24 families in the last couple of years from Afghanistan here. It's an extraordinary achievement. I think all of us have some sense of how difficult things are there, and to be able to bring so many people who are in life only trying to do kind of extraordinary work here is a great service. And Jane Unruh is here, and I want to acknowledge her. Please stand up. Jane, I know that we play a small part in what you do, but we're very proud and happy to be your collaborator, even in a modest way. So thank you. And all three of our guests here have been part of this Scholars at Risk program. All of them have come here since the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan. So it is really wonderful to have all of you here. I'm just going to introduce all three of you and then introduce Homi, but to say to the audience, we'll also have some translation from Dari. So we began the day with translation from Gujarati, actually a very particular dialect of Gujarati, into English, and we end it with Dari. So we are a South Asia institute. So we have Homeira Qaderi. She's a writer, activist, and educator, has written 7 books. Her first book, translated to English, Dancing in the Mosque, an Afghan mother's letter to her son, was excerpted by the New York Times and chosen by Kirkus Reviews as one of the best nonfiction books of 2020. Dr. Qaderi is the Robert G. James Scholar Fellow at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study. Welcome. We have Omaid Sharifi, who is an activist, an artivist activist, I should say, president of both ArtLords and Wartists, a grassroots arts movement founded in Afghanistan to promote art and culture as a vehicle for social change. Mr. Sharifi is a fellow at the Mahindra Humanities Center. And we have Samiullah Nabipour. Samiullah has been a professor at Kabul University for 14 years, where he has served as Dean of Fine Arts and helped form the Cinema Studies Department, which he led for 6 years. Professor Nabipour founded the Kabul Student Film Festival and served as its president for 3 terms. And he's also a fellow at the Department of Art, Film, and Visual Studies at Harvard University. Welcome to all three of you. And let me just take a moment to introduce Homi Bhabha. Many of you will know him, but just forgive me one paragraph, because Homi is an inspiration to many of us who are here in graduate school. We all hope to someday achieve about 1/4 of what he's done. Homi Bhabha is the Anne Rothenberg Professor of Humanities in the English Department and Comparative Literature Department. He served as the director of the Humanities Center at Harvard. He's the founding director of the Mahindra Humanities Center at Harvard, and in the inaugural position of senior advisor to the president and provost of Harvard University. He's the author of numerous works exploring post-colonial theory, cultural change and power, contemporary art, and cosmopolitanism. His works include The Location of Culture, which was reprinted as a Routledge classic, and the edited volume Nation and Narration. Homi has also written on contemporary art for Art Forum, essays on the work of William Kentridge, Anish Kapoor, Terence Simon, and Matthew Barney, amongst others. And he has led a research project on global humanities with the support of both the Mellon Foundation and Volkswagen. He's a corresponding fellow at the British Academy, a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, critic in residence at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, where he's a partner to some work that the Mittal Institute is also doing. He holds honorary degrees from Harvard, from the Université Paris, University College London, Freie Universität Berlin, and the Stellenbosch University. He's been awarded the Humboldt Research Prize and the Government of India's Padma Bhushan Presidential Award in the field of literature and education, making him our second Padma Bhushan today. No, third. Sorry, excuse me. Homi, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hitesh. As always, you are both elegant and generous. And now I feel very old after being introduced with such generous detail, but you can't change. That's one thing you can't change. But it's a great honor to be here today. And I don't use that word lightly, as it is often used in academic parlance. The honor of being here comes from the company I'm keeping. And the company I keep is a profoundly complex group of people with a faith that is becoming more and more global, and at the same time, in many countries, the very nature of the combination of an ethno-nationalist, autocratic populisms, and at the same time, the crackdown on migration, the crackdown on refugees, the making of what Hannah Arendt called a wired labyrinth. The process is not only getting out of your country, the process is then the way in which the barbed wire labyrinth, that's a phrase, takes you through generations of lives in a lifetime, generations of deaths in a lifetime. And these are the dark passages through which our scholars at risk work, and they survive. And in this strange tryst of death and life, and I'm not talking about death simply as dying, I'm talking about death as loss, death as deprivation. In this tryst of wanting to make a new life for yourself, when you're coping with the loss of other lives, often physical, but also psychological, also material, is really an achievement. And the risk of these scholars and the scholarship they produce is often in contrast to the lack of risk taken both in ethical and intellectual terms by universities, wealthy universities, less wealthy universities, but in any case, universities in far more profitable and productive states of being and states of mind. So I think every term in this title, scholars, is not only about scholarship, it's about the risk to scholarship. Risk is not only about a mind and a narrative of ideas or a career, it is about a fundamental ontological and moral risk that is taken by our colleagues and our friends today. That's why it's an honor to be here to honor you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, are you going first? Yes, please go first and take your time. And actually, I want to do something else. Before you start, I want each one of you here to speak literally in 2 sentences or 2 words, to say something about the emotional, psychological, and physical experience of having to leave Afghanistan, for having to leave home. Give me a word, give me a phrase, give me a sentence. Do not give me a paragraph. I want to do that before we start talking in prose, because this is a kind of poetry of loss.
It's hard to speak about Afghanistan and my living from a country to don't cry. So I really cannot speak about those days in 2 sentences. I'm sorry.
One word. Fear.
I miss my country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, our friend.
I thought this is that. This is the
And our friend.
Thank you. I think I miss my mountains. If you have ever visited Kabul, and you know there's a lot of beautiful mountains, and everywhere else I wake up, I feel disoriented. I feel I'm lost in any new city. So it's mountains. I miss those mountains.
Thank you very much. I can't speak. The silence overwhelms me. I felt I was dying or dead, and I miss my mountain. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Such a sorrow came to my mind and my heart when I'm speaking about Afghanistan. Every time before any interview that I have, I promise myself to don't speak about Afghanistan or about those days and don't cry. But it's hard when the name of Afghanistan raised up. I cannot control my emotion and I cannot control my mind. I always stuck in those days. Sometimes in these near 2 years, I think my feet in the ground of Boston, but my head is Kabul, Herat, Badakhshan, Kandahar, Khost, Helmand, Konat. Every part of my country is like, it's better to don't speak because I won't continue my speech. I wanted to speak today about my experience with art. I know you have many good resources to read about the artistic theories. I want to just speak about my experience in Afghanistan and how a story writing became serious for me. I wanted to start with I'm a storyteller, so I will start it with telling some story to you. I remember when bombardment started in my city, Herat, by the Russian soldier when they invaded Afghanistan. I remember my mother took refuge in our basement and kept my hand tightly and started to telling me some story. One of the most important story to stay in my mind is about the Buzak Kandi. This story is about a goat, and the goat one day, I know, maybe you have heard this story, but I wanted to repeat it. A goat is going to the desert to eat some fresh grass, to have some fresh milk, to give it to her children. But a wolf attacked to her house and eats her children. And when she returned to house and she saw the empty house, she understood by her youngest goats that wolf it's her children. And so he announced in the big fight with the wolf, and finally in battlefield she won, and she tears apart the belly of the wolf and pull out her child. So my mom say this story just because told me this story just because she wanted for me to don't hearing the voice of bombardment. And I love it because my mom could keep me busy in those moments. But the other side of the story was the strength of the story that gives to me. And I was sure if Russian soldiers wanted to eat me, my mom will be there and pull me out of her belly. So a story had many reasons for me to stack in my mind. After that, unfortunately, we had, after the invasion of the Russian that took along 10 years in Afghanistan, we had, unfortunately, 4 years of civil war. And that was a big shame for us. I know many countries had this big shame in their history, and we had to. So my father had fought with the communist soldier, Russian soldier, for near to 6 years. But in the civil war period, he put away his gun, and he left alone with a lot of memory of the time that he fought with the Russian soldiers. The only thing that I have seen and noticed that became a reason for my father relax is the book. He started to read many fiction Russian literature, and it was interesting for me because he fought with them for near 6-7 years, and at the end, became relaxed and be in peace. He started to read their stories and their literature, Chekhov, Dostoevsky, and Tolstoy's. I remember that my father found her inner peace through the literature, and I saw it, So after the civil war, 4-year civil war, the Taliban conquered Afghanistan. So I started to read with my father Russian literature, but it wasn't very serious for me. Those times, many fiction literature of Russian was translated in Iran, and all those translated books flowed to Herat because the border was open and no government monitored the borders like now Taliban do it. But for me, a story telling and read a story became very serious after Taliban conquered Afghanistan. When they attacked Afghanistan, I was around 12, and suddenly I washed up from every place except the house. The wall getting older, taller, and the school gate was closed, and even we couldn't go to doctor without mahram. So all of things make more bring me more suffering, and at the same time also I really suffered. I'm severely traumatized from the war because all of my childhood was lost in the wartime. So I thought how I can find my peace, and the only pattern that I had, it was my father and mother behavior. When she started to tell me a story, and when my father started to read the stories. So I started to read and say some stories for my sibling, but I think they are not enough for me. I suffering more and more. And the only things that could help me was when I started to writing, because I think I thought that I am like a god. I can make creative for myself my own word through the stories. With the stories, my story was the only place that I could go to through the open door of our house to LA, to streets, and go even to my school and see my classmates, see my teacher, and laughing with them loudly. Even the Taliban could hear us. So at this time, Taliban times, in 1996, writing for me became very serious at the time that I lost my friends one by one. Self-immolation in Herat, especially in my city, became very common between girls. So the only way that I could to survive was writing. So after 2001, it wasn't easy to survive, but it was a reason for me. After 2001, when the Taliban left Afghanistan, the situation is getting better. I don't want to say the situation was perfect for me because I was a woman. And every time when you are a woman, you are like a soldier and you should fight. So I fought, but in the good, with the good gun, And I remember that in those 20 years, from 2001 and 2021, year to 20 years, the situation is getting better and better. Yes, I know. Of course, we had many suicide attacks. I remember it wasn't one day that I be sure that I'm going out of the house and will return alive to my house again. But still, we learn how to live even with the suicide attack bombing in Afghanistan. I wrote many books, 7 books for adults, 9 books for children, and I had many, launch books in Afghanistan. Market of the books, publisher markets getting better in Afghanistan, and even sometimes government helped them, but not always. But it was okay, and many writers and poets could to be in market, and they have their books, and even it was started to become like income for them, not a high income, but in Afghanistan, even a little income from the book, it was surprise, and it started to happen for the writers and poets. But after the collapse, everything's collapsed. In one night, I remember on August 22 of 2021, French evacuated more than 400 poets and writers from Afghanistan. And it was not the first time that happened to Afghanistan, this big immigration. It happened in the late of 1918 Afghanistan, and we lost the literature umbrella one times. Many our writers went across the country. We lost Akram Osman without big books. After that, we lost Espujme Zargab in France. She is alive, but after she came as an immigrant, she never wrote again. So again, it's happened in Afghanistan in 2021. I am one of them that I'm living here right now. Actually, I was lost in the first year. But because I was find my way before 2021 here, I am continuing to write right now, but I'm not sure about the future. Can I have a life of a writer here or not? But what's happening for the writers or poet or any artist in Afghanistan right now, as you see, when the Taliban arrived to Afghanistan, they direct went to the musicians universities, and they broken down all of the music instruments, and so they show what is their behavior with the artist and art. So I try to compact all of things because it was just 10 minutes. I know it's not easy to speak about Afghanistan or situation of artists in Afghanistan, but I want to say we found our way during the wartime in Afghanistan, and it stayed with us. And I am not a person who give up with this, but I know the situation is not easy for us, but I am grateful because I know this. If I stay in Afghanistan, the situation getting worse. I hope to don't speak more than 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Homeira. This is a very remarkable contribution, because you really started like a writer by telling us a story, an allegory, a fable, a myth. And as you continued, you were able to interpret that in relation to your own mother, in relation to her taking in a refugee. So you elaborated that myth, and finally, you come to this big question of whether finding settlement and security elsewhere silences you after a while or allows you to speak further. And I think that's such a deep and problematic situation that none of us who have the ease of continuity should ever forget it. This is why I said, in many respects, being a refugee, even being a migrant, is a form of death. But thank you very much for bringing life to death. Please. Yes, yourself. Oh, this is the order? Okay. So, Omaid, where are you?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very, very pleased to be speaking with you today, and I would have loved to be there in that room with each and every one of you. Unfortunately, I'm in Paris right now, and it's for work. We have an art project where we paint with refugees who came here 30 years ago. North African refugees from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. So we are doing art therapy sessions, we are doing mural painting, and so many more. So I hope this virtually being there is sufficient. And I would like to share some thoughts and some slides about the work that we do, and I hope you enjoy and ask questions. So I work with ArtLords. ArtLords is a very beautiful organization. We started in Kabul, in Afghanistan.
You just say that once again, just for the group. What's the organization called?
ArtLords. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with warlords, drug lords, all of those evil lords in Afghanistan. So this is the ArtLords, the positive lords. Let me share some screens. I think it will help us all to see when I talk about visual art and public murals and all of that. So when we started ArtLords, the journey for me has been that I never ever left Afghanistan. So I never lived anywhere else except Kabul. Talking about when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, I was born, and then Dr. Homeira talked about the civil war, the Mujahideen, the Taliban, the American invasion. So all of that, I was in Kabul, and never ever lived or called any other place home. Though we had the chance to immigrate or be a refugee in other places, but my parents never decided to leave. So this is the first time for me that I'm trying to find a new place to live. And that's why I'm in many places. I live in Virginia and sometimes came to Cambridge and Harvard. I have a place in Istanbul. So I'm trying to figure out where I can best fit. And sometimes finding that that new home is becoming very difficult. So ArtLords wanted to be the voice of the voiceless. And it's very interesting because I remember growing up in Kabul, I was able to ride my bicycle everywhere I wanted to. The school that I went to was right across the presidential palace. So imagine I was walking to my school and looking at the palace, Ark, which we call it in Afghanistan, every day. And then suddenly, post 9/11, and when the American invasion happened and all of that, so you have all these big security walls around Kabul city and then the provinces as well. And these are called blast walls. So these, imagine 8 meters tall concrete and steel walls. Covering everything. It's blocking the roads, it's blocking the sidewalks, it's blocking the beautiful architecture and buildings that Kabul used to have. So I was no longer able to walk to my school or ride my bicycle to my school. And then it was all covered by these big blast walls and guns and all of that. So what we decided to do was to bring down these walls. As simple as that. And that bringing down those walls led to establishment of ArtLords. We got up buckets of paint, some brushes, our friends, and we went on and started painting. And these blast walls was our canvas. It was an opportunity for us to communicate with the people. It was an opportunity for people of Afghanistan, for all those people who did not have a voice, to communicate with the powerful, those people who were in the government or the international community. So that's how ArtLords came into being in 2014. And we started asking and inviting people to paint with us. The idea behind this was that somehow we were trying to promote critical thinking. We were trying to engage the ordinary people of Afghanistan to ask questions, to be part of an initiative that's started by Afghans, by volunteers, and is maintained and is providing solutions. Because what I remember growing up, that we were doing a lot of work for free. We were doing a lot of work as volunteers. But then in the last 20 years of a lot of money and funding and all of that, so everybody was waiting if the Americans are doing something, or the NATO was doing something, or the government was doing something for them. So all the young population of Afghanistan was sitting there. By painting these murals, we wanted to encourage the people of Afghanistan to ask questions and also start their own initiatives. Let's start it from your village, from your home, from your community, from your province. And ArtLords was sort of an example for them, saying that, look, with a dozen brushes, 2 buckets of paint, we're painting murals that says, hey, I see you, you're stealing the money, I'll take you to justice, God is seeing you. So that sort of became how we really engaged with the public in Kabul and different provinces of Afghanistan. And somehow we also wanted to bring art to the people. So growing up in Afghanistan, I never ever went to a gallery because there was none. Kabul Museum was looted by the Mujahideen when the Soviet-backed government collapsed. So there was nothing to see in terms of art. Taliban had banned any expression of art when they came in 1996. So imagine for a young person my age, there was no signs and symbols of art. For us, bringing public murals and murals on the streets and inviting people to paint was somehow bringing art to the people. And by that, we thought, when you bring something beautiful to the people, when a young Afghan has the opportunity to look at something beautiful, I think it makes them hopeful. It makes them think positively, because you're surrounded by poverty, by all blast walls and violence and all of that. So that is sort of the motto behind the work we did. I have to warn you, because some of these murals that you will see, most of them, we painted over 2,200 murals. And the first thing that the Taliban did, they painted over all of our murals. So these murals are no longer there. And as you can see, we had the religious scholars, we had the kids, we had the army officers, we had anybody was welcome to get a brush and start painting with us. And these are very important social issues. Like we are talking about fighting corruption, because we knew Afghanistan is not corrupt. The people of Afghanistan are not corrupt, but yes, that 1,000 or 2,000 people who were the members of parliament, government, international community, they were heavily involved in corruption. So our themes and topics included like ICU, fighting corruption, or issues of countering violent extremism. For example, this mural, Hamida Barmaki, she was killed by a suicide attacker in a grocery store. And this suicide attack was claimed by Hizb Islami Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. And we painted this mural right in front of Hekmatyar's house when he did a deal with the government, peace deal. And we told him that you killed this woman with his husband, with her husband, and 2 kids. He was there, like the culture of impunity was there for the last 40, 50 years. So such topics were the daily murals that we would be painting, or Ravel Singh, which was a co-founder of ArtLords, a kind person. He was killed in an explosion in Nangarhar. So we were bringing very important social issues that we took from the people. So people from different communities and provinces would send us messages, text, by talking to us on the streets, that what are important social issues for them, and then we would turn that into public art, and we painted with them. That's why we painted 2,200 murals, and only 3 murals were destroyed. So imagine people of Afghanistan protecting their own murals. And it was not just murals, but we also extended to street theater. For example, this street theater is in Shindand. Shindand is bordering with Iran and Afghanistan in Herat province. And probably this would be for a lot of these people, the first time they're seeing a street theater show. And they were engaged in it as well. Or art therapy sessions, which we are continuing right now as well in different countries. These were the kind of activities that we continued both inside Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan. We did a lot of exhibitions. to share a different story from the country, which is really, I think, misrepresented. Not a lot of people really know exactly the positive stories about Afghanistan. Everybody knows about the drugs, about the Taliban, about the terrorism, about the corruption, but there's so much more to Afghanistan that nobody had a chance to explain. So by doing exhibitions and mural paintings, we also try to tell a different story of what's happening. And as I mentioned, this is what happened 10 days into Taliban being in power, in control of Kabul. They started painting over the murals. This was the American embassy in Kabul. Now it's the flags of the Taliban. This was a mural for the girls that say a famous poem that we will sing again. And then it was gone. It says that a saying from the Taliban or their religious scholars. So that's what happened to our murals, but we did not stop. I was forced to leave Afghanistan just to have a voice not only for myself, but a lot of people who are still stuck inside Afghanistan. And I hope that we could continue to preserve our culture, our art, and someday when Kabul, Afghanistan is free, we could go back with whatever that we have preserved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Omaid, just before we continue, I've got two or three clarificatory questions. Why was it called ArtLords? Or is this a bad translation of something else? Just sounds to me like you could have called it art ladies, art people. Why lords, which is a very specific, at least in English, it has a very specific kind of lordly, militant kind of, why lords? Who are the lords?
We tried to make fun of the warlords and the drug lords. We just took a jab at the negative lords.
Well, that makes
good sense. Be the positive, constructive lords.
that makes good sense. The other thing I wanted to just say was how important murals have become. As you know, the worldwide protest against the death of George Floyd, and in the spirit of Black Lives Matter, the form that was used all over, I think there were at one stage, there were over 2,000, I'm writing about this, 2,000, maybe 20,000 murals, 20,000 murals recorded. And I think mural art is really coming back and should come back for various reasons. Not only because it is in spirit democratic, but it is also in material democratic. On the walls, and in fact, one of the great murals of George Floyd was Black Lives Matter in Washington on the road. So it changes our notion both of medium, and it changes our sense that you go into a museum, you see art on your own or with a few informed people. And it makes calligraphy part of the artistic tradition. Of course, in the Islamic tradition, the calligraphic art is a long tradition, much less so in the West, much less so in India. So I think this murals is something we should really think about as the sign of the times, the signification and of the times we are in. So I thank you very much, Omaid. We are very pleased to see you. As you said, unfortunately, you're in Paris. I think you could phrase that again. But now I understand why you feel that Paris is not good enough. Yes.
May I have a question of clarification? Because I just wanted some clarification. Sorry, I didn't want to make a spectacle. I just wanted to understand the chronology, because with regard to art production and the acceptance of art, in the last 30 years, there has been various phases, including the reopening of the museums and the art schools. But this appears to be before that, wasn't it? What years were you showing us the murals? What years is that? And when did you leave Afghanistan?
I left on August 22nd. August 15th, Taliban took Kabul. and August 22nd, 1 week after that, I was evacuated and forced to leave. These murals were painted from 2014 to 2021. Right on the day the Taliban came, we also painted the mural.
Okay, so during the period when there was a lot of chaos and fighting back and forth, because were any of your colleagues involved with the art schools that were growing up from the time after 2003-04? Then the museum opened up again, and there were art schools and in all different media, Afghan media and Western media. Were any of your friends and colleagues involved in that? Did that have any impact in the society, or was it for a small group?
A widespread impact on the society. In fact, ArtLords were working with 53 artists, and 90% of the artists were graduates of Kabul University Faculty of Arts. And 35% of them were women, which were also graduates of Faculty of Arts at the Kabul University. So the recent, like at least from 2010 afterwards, we had significant achievements in terms of art galleries, art schools, and also in one simple corner of Kabul city in Barchi area, I did a research, we had over 200 art studios just in one single corner of Kabul. So there was significant achievements and impact of the art schools and organizations who were working for art.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Every time you answer a question, you get another clap. I would like now to please Samiullah Nabipour to talk about your experience.
In the name of God, hello to all. I want to thank those who made this panel possible, and I have a special thanks from Jane. For this, please, for Jane.
Jane.
I have to speak Persian or talk Persian because I can't speak English. I have translator, interpreter. I speak Persian, but my friend is here. نمیخوایم درباره دستاوردهای دیپارتمنت سینما صحبت کنم. هم شکل دهی دیپارتمنت و هم دستاوردهای دیپارتمنت. این به خاطر را تعیین کردم که این مبتنی است بر تجربه ما دیپارتمنت با همکارای دیگه ایجاد کردیم. این یکی از مؤسسین دیپارتمنت بودیم و یکی از اونها استاد زبیر هاشمی است که اینجا حضور دارن. ما 12 سال در این دیپارتمنت تدریس کردم. 6 سال آمریت دیپارتمنت با دوش داشتم و این دیپارتمنت نخستین و یگانه نهاد سینمایی اکادمیک در افغانستان است. نه قبل از این ما یک نهاد اکادمیک داشتیم و نه حالا غیر از دیپارتمنت سینما دیگر چنین نهادی اکادمیک سینمایی که در دانشگاه باشه تدریس کنه وجود نداره. Please.
I will be talking about the achievements of the cinema department as the only academic cinema department in Afghanistan. Of course, these talks are based on my personal experience, based on teaching there for 12 years as a professor in the cinema department and being in charge of managing the department for 6 years. I will be sharing this based on my personal experience and own efforts, and 3 of my colleagues in 2008 at Kabul University, and the purpose of its establishment was to train a generation of specialists in Afghan cinema.
دیپارتمنت سینما در آغاز وقتی را ایجاد کردیم با چالش ها و مشکلات زیادی مواجه بود. کمبود کادر متخصص، نبود پول به خاطر پیشبرد دیپارتمنت، کمبود مواد درسی و مسائل دیگری. همه فکر سال اول بسیار با مشکلات با چالش ها سپری شد. همه فکر میکردن، خصوصا سینماگرایی که بیرون از دانشگاه بودن و باوری به این دیپارتمنت نداشتن، فکر میکردن که شاید 1 سال دوام نبیاره. اما آنچه که وجود داشت تعهد و باورمند به آینده بود تا اینکه دیپارتمنت دوام پیدا کرد.
In the beginning, the cinema department faced many challenges: lack of expert staff, lack of teaching materials, lack of technical equipment for filmmaking, lack of money to meet the needs of this department. The first teaching year of this institution was spent with many challenges, especially posed by cinematographers who were against the establishment of the cinema department and hoped that its gate would be closed soon.
کریکولم دیپارتمنت ما در مشوره با سینماگرای متخصص، کسایی که تحصیل کرده در بیرون از افغانستان بودند، این را ساختیم. روی دو بخش استوار بود. یک دانشجو بعد سال اول و دوم درس‌های نظری را فرا می‌گرفت و سال سوم و چهارم میرفت دنبال فعالیت عملی. ما از 2008 تا 2010 تمام تلاش و توجه ما به این ساختیم که از یک طرف بتانیم پارت اولی کریکولم تطبیق کنیم و از طرف دیگر نیازمندی هایی که دیپارتمنت داره باید نیازمندی ها را پره بکنیم. یعنی خرید وسایل تکنیکی، تکمیل مواد درسی و همچنان جذب نهادهای کمک کننده به دیپارتمنت سینما.
The curriculum of the cinema department, which was formed by the advice of famous and educated Afghan cinematographers, was designed so that students learn the basics and the theory of cinema in the first 4 semesters, and the other 4 semesters to focus on practical learning. From 2008 to 2010, I focused our attention and efforts on implementing the first part of the curriculum and meeting the serious needs of a centralized academic institution, which was successful, and along with its implementation, we were able to purchase the basic filmmaking equipment in cooperation with Kabul University and the German Goethe Institute.
از سال 2010 تا 2012 ما روی تطبیق بخش دومی کریکولم کار کردیم. یعنی خواستیم که فعالیت‌های عملی را آغاز کنیم، خواستیم که تولید فیلم شروع شود، تولید فیلم داشته باشیم. هر دانشجو در این مرحله یک صحنه از یک فیلم انتخاب میکرد. البته یک نظر با فیلمی را که دوست داشت، این را زیر نظر استاد راهنمایش کار میکرد و این کار یک فرصتی را برای این مساعد میساخت تا اینکه جرأت بگیره، جسارت کنه و کارهای بعدیش خوبتر و درست‌تر انجام بده و آنچه که در درس‌های نظری و تئوری خوانده او را بیاید عملی کنه.
From 2010 to 2012, we adopted the second part of the curriculum, which entailed working with 3rd and 4th year students in the field of short film production. In their early phases, each student would choose a scene from a desired film and recreate that with the instructor, which gave the students the courage to implement their own sources of inspiration into their own short film productions.
در خزان 2013 ما با 70 فیلمی تولیدی دیپارتمنت سینما که از 2010 تا 2013 ساخته شده بود، نخستین جشنواره فیلم کوتاه دانشجویی را آغاز کردیم. البته نخستین جشنواره فیلم کوتاه دانشجویی یک انقلاب بود، یک انقلاب فرهنگی برای دیپارتمنت سینما بود و برای سینمای اکادمیک افغانستان. این جشنواره فرصت‌های زیادی را برای دانشجویان و برای دیپارتمنت سینما و برای سینمای افغانستان مساعد ساخت. هدف از برگزاری دیپارتمنت معرفی آثار دانشجویان، تشویق و ترغیب دانشجویان برای خلق آثار بهتر و خوبتر، رابطه سازی بین دانشجویان و فیلمسازای بیرون از دانشگاه و همچنان تشویق دانشجویان به خاطر حضور در جشنواره‌های ملی و بین‌المللی بود. این دوره فرصت‌های خیلی خوب ایجاد شد. خوبترین سینماگر افغانستان به عنوان هیئت جوری و هیئت کمیته گزینش در این جشنواره حضور پیدا کردند. فیلم‌های دانشجویان بعد از این جشنواره و جشنواره‌های مختلفی را پیدا کرد و رسانه‌های افغانستان به فیلم‌های دانشجویی و دیپارتمنت سینما توجه خاص کرد.
In the fall of 2013, we held the first student short film festival with the participation of 70 short films that were produced by the students in the cinema department. This was an academic revolution. The purpose of this festival was to introduce students' works, encourage them to participate in national and international festivals, and institutionalize the Student Film Festival in Afghanistan. This festival created many opportunities for students in the cinema department, including the membership of the most famous Afghan filmmakers in the selection committee and the jury committee, reflection of the department's achievements through media, and the promotion of student films in national and international festivals.
6 ماه بعدتر از نخستین جشنواره فیلم دانشجویی، دومین جشنواره بین‌المللی فیلم حقوق بشر در افغانستان دایر شد. این جشنواره یک بخش خود اختصاص داد برای فیلم‌های دانشجویی که در اونجا دانشجویان ما توانستند که رده‌های اول، جوایز رده‌های اول، دوم و سوم دریافت کنند. یکی از هیئت‌های جوری یا هیئت داور که از انگلستان دعوت شده بود به نام جان برگان، او در مصاحبه‌ای که با BBC داره میگه آنچه که مرا در این جشنواره حیرت زده کرد فیلم‌های جوانای دانشجو بود. آینده سینمای افغانستان از آن دانشجو است. همچنان عتیق رحیمی فیلمساز مشهور افغانستان وقتی با یکی از اساتید ما روبرو میشه برش میگه که نام استاد ما دلدار است. آقای دلدار شما چی کردین در این دیپارتمنت؟ میگه من با دیدن فیلم‌های دانشجویی حیرت زده شدم. شما باور کنین که میگه مکتب یدک دانشجویی مکتب یدک فرانسه در دوره دانشجویی چنین فیلم را ساخته نمیتونه. این فیلم‌های شما از لحاظ محتوا و از لحاظ درون مایه بالاتر از فیلم‌هایی است که یک دانشجوی فرانسه در فرانسه با همه امکانات تولید میکنه.
6 months after the first Student Short Film Festival, the second International Human Rights Film Festival was held in Afghanistan, part of which was dedicated to student films, and students were able to win the first, second, and third category awards in this festival. One of the judges at this festival, named John Bergan, who was invited from England, said in a conversation with BBC, and I quote, "What surprised me while watching the films is that young students led the production. The future of Afghan cinema is in their hands." Atiqi Rahimi, a famous Afghan filmmaker, said to one of our professors, and I quote, "What you have done in the cinema department was unbelievable to me, because your students make better films than the French student."
They live in Paris.
در سال 2018 نظر به پیشنهاد اتحادیه سینماگرای تاجیکستان و موافقه دانشگاه کابل یک بخش جشنواره بین المللی دیدار تاجیکستان دیدار International Film Festival in تاجیکستان اختصاص داد برای فیلم‌های دانشجویی و قرار بود که بعد از 2018 که یک سال بعد جشنواره دایر میشد همه ساله ما یک بخش جشنواره را فیلم‌های دانشجویی پر کنند.
In 2018, according to a proposal of the Tajik Cinematographers Union and Kabul University, they agreed to partner in dedicating a section of the International Film Festival of Tajikistan in showing films made by students at Kabul University.
از سال 2010 تا 2021 بیش از 300 فیلم کوتاه در دپارتمان سینما تولید شد. 3 دور جشنواره دانشجویی دایر شد، 7 رساله 41 جایزه از جشنواره‌های بین المللی و جشنواره‌ای که در افغانستان دایر میشد دانشجوی ما دریافت کردند، 7 رساله ماستری و یک تزیس دکترا و بیش از 20 مقاله تحقیقی در ابعاد مختلف سینما افغانستان توسط اساتید این دپارتمنت نوشته شده که در ژورنال‌های بین‌المللی هندوستان، چین، آسیای میانه و همچنین مجله دانشگاه کابل نشر شد.
In the decade leading up to 2021, 41 student awards, more than 300 short films were produced in this department. 300 rounds of student festivals. 3 rounds of student festivals were held, 7 master theses, and 1 doctoral thesis was awarded. And more than 20 research articles on various dimensions of Afghan cinema were written by professors in this department. International journals from around the world, such as from India, China, and Central Asia, recognize the success of our cinema program at Kabul University.
چی چیزی فیلم دانشجویی ما را یا فیلم افغانستان از فیلم دنیا متفاوت می‌سازد؟ البته دردی است که دانشجوی ما و هر افغانستانی از بدوی تولدش تا که زنده است خصوصا در 40 سال اخیر عمل میکنه. دانشجوی ما دردی در فیلمش بیان میکرد که او را با گوشت و پوست و استخوانش لمس کرده بود. دانشجوی ما دردی که لمس کرده بود، دردی را که میدید که مردمان و سرزمینش 40 سال است که را حمل میکنند، برای جهان نابینا و کشورهای تروریست پرور فریاد میزد.
What makes our students' short films different and unique compared to the short films in other countries is the subject and content and the production of the films. Afghanistan is the land of stories. Our students reflected a pain from their own life experiences, a pain that the people of Afghanistan endured for more than 40 years. With their films, our students acquired a channel for shouting their pain to terrorist countries and the blind world to see.
قبل از اون که او را بخوانید من میگم که افغان ها و افغانستانی ها مردمان بسیار با استعداد هستند، بسیار مردمان توانا هستند، مردمان بسیار مهربان هستند. اما آنچه که در افغانستان میگذره، جنگ 40 سال افغانستان تحمیل شده. تروریست در افغانستان تحمیل شده و افغانستان قربانی تروریست است و افغانستانی ها در مقابل تروریست 40 سال است که مبارزه میکنند.
The people of Afghanistan are talented, they are kind. For 40 years, more than 40 years, they have been victims of terror, a terror that's been imposed, a terror that has endured for way too long.
روی وضعیت فعلی دپارتمنت سینما و دانشکده هنرهای زیبای دانشگاه کابل که در چی وضعیتی هستند، دانشجوهای ما در چی وضعیتی هستند، کسایی که از این دانشکده یا از این دپارتمنت سند کارشناسی گرفتن یا سند لیسانس گرفتن، سند ماستری گرفتن، فعلا کجا هستند، چی میکنن، وضعیت خودی از این دپارتمنت دانشکده چطور است. در بخش پرسش ها و پاسخ ها میخوایم که به این پاسخ بدم اگر پرسشی بود.
If there are any questions, for example, in regards to the current state of the department, the fate of the many alumni and students who were part of this program, or the various experiences that went into its formation, I'm happy to address them in the question and answer portion of today's program.
Thank you.
Please, one.
You want another? Yeah. Well, we have to give you a clap and then you can ask another one.
آنچه که من اینجا صحبت کردم، ما تعداد زیادی از فیلم‌های دانشجویی را با خود داریم و اجازه نشرش هم داریم. من امیدوار هستم که یک فرصتی دیگه برابر شود که ما بتونیم که این فیلم‌ها را نمایش بدیم و روی از اون فیلم‌ها صحبت بیشتر داشته باشیم.
I have brought the many films that our students at Kabul University produced over the years, and I have the rights to broadcast them and hope to be able to share this with this university campus.
تشکر از همه شما از توجهتان.
Thank you.
Well, you know, when you spoke, it was like when I was a child watching movies in India, every now and then it would stop, and then it would start again. So I felt very much at home during your excellent talk. So I just want to say, that we are now not talking about one catastrophic moment or two catastrophic moments in a national history. And in the relatively contemporary phase of that, each one of your talks was about this endless interruption. You think you'll gain something, you think you'll gain peace and security, it breaks again and again and again. As I say, rather like a film where the vinyl cracks. And this makes me think, this is a very difficult situation. There are a few people who've written about this. Hannah Arendt is one who've written philosophically about this. But what strikes me, and I think I want to say this here today, is how the same fate, in a very different way, has existed for the Ukraine. They've again and again and again they've taken on. They've been their sovereignty has been questioned. They've been threatened, and that's why there is this line in the national anthem which says, "But Ukraine is not yet lost." And that conditionality, not yet lost, should put us all on, to push us all at an attentive moment. Not yet lost is it could be lost. In your case, it has been lost several times. What remains after it's lost? Generations change, people change, the system molds you. But the not yet lost is also a call to arms. It's also, by which I don't mean, I'm not suggesting terrorist acts. It's a call to moral arms. It's a call to saying there is something to be saved. There is something, and each of you have saved that in your own way. You belong to this continuity in eternal crisis. And I think for that, we honor your witness, and we deeply recognize your work today. I'm going to move on and I'll get the audience to ask questions, but I want to put a question before that. Why did the Americans fail so tragically? So no, they were not tragic in terms of your country. Why did, yes, for Afghanistan, after creating in the expectations of the world, this aspiration that something would be stabilized, that something would occur, that something foundational would be established. And when I saw with millions around the world that the Americans were negotiating with the Taliban, I thought, gosh, is this the Dante's third circle of hell? I mean, what is going on? So please don't feel that you've got to constrain yourselves. I'm not asking you to take a political position. I'm asking you to speak about yourselves, your work, and your life in this context, because those of us who are not part of it were absolutely shocked. Who wants to go first?
Okay. If I get your question, is that you're asking why the USA fell down in Afghanistan.
Why did the United States leave the Afghanistan in the state in which it did? Why did it negotiate with the Taliban? What is so problematic in Afghanistan that they couldn't make it work?
That sounds like a question for our side.
No, it's not only because they suffered it. They suffered it. I want to hear from their perspective. We know what we think. I mean, I'm sure not everybody thinks the same. But for those who are given continuously the hope there will be democracy, there will be stability, Iraq, Syria, and what you get is nightmare after nightmare. The American dream is not dreamt here. The American nightmare is what is dreamt in Latin America and parts of Europe and parts of Africa. So I just want to know, I don't have to give a But what did you feel? Why you were part of that society? What went wrong?
At the first, I want to say, I never think that Taliban deletes me from the society life. I think that it was the United States who deleted me from the negotiation peace table at the first on 2017 and 18, before the Taliban do it. Because we, as a woman in Afghanistan, at least me as an activist, I went with the other group of women, embassy by embassy in Kabul, and asked them, please bring us to this negotiation peace table. And they didn't want to put the peace discussion under the risk, because they said, if we bring women to the peace negotiation, maybe Taliban wanted to leave the negotiation.
Thank you. We would not have heard this. I never knew about this. You would not have learned
3 years, near to 3 years. We argue with a lot of embassy in Kabul, all of the organization Kabul and the big NGO to bring us and allow us to speak with Taliban face to face. And they say no. So we never speak about Taliban right now. We are speak about the United States and its allies. The first one. But if I wanted to see why, I always remember when in 2001, I was near to 17 those days, when the United States came to Afghanistan with a lot of big slogans, and we believed to it, and we give soldiers to that big slogans. More than 500,000 soldiers was killed in Afghanistan, and nobody counted. And nobody said, at the end, Biden had a press conference and said, the people of Afghanistan never fight for self, because they don't account our soldiers. They don't account our dead in the street, in hospital, in the university, in schools. So after, I always think United States came to my country as a friend, but at 2021, United States turned back to us as an enemy.
Thank you.
And bring a big contract, friendship contract with the commander, Talib, and leave the people alone. Yes, we are 3 of us here, or maybe 100,000 of people of Afghanistan came out of Afghanistan, but we are speaking about the near to 14 million people in Afghanistan. 14 million people is a big number. So when I wanted to speak about my perspective, art perspective, I want to say United States and even government of Afghanistan never ever take serious art in Afghanistan. And ever the very famous artists out of Afghanistan, foreign artists, never take serious art for Afghanistan. It means they believe to art, but they didn't believe to us. I sent the article, I don't want to say which magazine here in United States, and I said why Afghanistan didn't have an established situation in these 20 years. And I just discussed it through the art perspective. And the woman, the new chief editor, told me that, do you think that really art can bring change in Afghanistan? And you don't know how much I feel insulted. Why not? You can make art for yourself as a big income. You have Hollywood and many big book publishers here that they have billion income in year just because of book and cinema. But when it's come to Afghanistan, really? She asked like this, you are serious, art in Afghanistan?
No, can I just say that people I'm sure here will say Homi is completely displacing this conversation by talking about politics and not about art. But there is no, the two things are so connected. What I've learned from you here is that art acts in a culture both as an infrastructure, and it also acts as a level of the symbolic imagination of a people. Stories are part of the infrastructure. Stories are part also of the symptoms of suffering, loneliness, and loss. Please.
Who can put a border between art and politics?
But that is interesting, because the connection in Afghanistan is so clear.
So
That is
clear.
why I wanted
Yes,
to ask you that
exactly.
question, and thank you
Thank
for a
you.
remarkable answer.
Thank you.
Can I speak? Please. Can I talk?
Yes, absolutely, sir. Am I so threatening? You think I'm stopping you from talk? Please talk. That's my job here.
ما به این نظر هستم که نام دومی هنر سیاست است.
I'm in the opinion that the second name of art is politics.
ببینید به نظر من برای حکومت ها، برای سیاستمدارها مهم نیست که کی در کجا حاکمیت داره.
Governments aren't bothered by who is in charge where.
هر کشوری، ما برای مردم میام صحبت نمی کنم، فقط در بخش حکومت صحبت می کنم. هر حکومت دنبال منافع خود است.
I'm not talking about the people here, but each sovereign state is after its own benefits.
ببینین سالهای سال است که حکومت امریکا با عربستان سعودی دوست است. شما هیچ تفاوتی را در دید طالبان و حکومت سعودی پیدا کردن نمیتونین.
For many years, the governments of the United States and Saudi Arabia have been very closely affiliated. You don't see much difference between Saudi Arabia and the thinking of the Taliban.
ایرا باید سیاستمدارا و تحلیلگرا بیشتر روی از این موضوع پردازند. اما من ایرا میگم که اگر امریکا 10% یا 10% پولی را که برای جنگ در افغانستان مصرف کرد برای فرهنگ مصرف میکرد، امروز دیگر نه طالبی داشتیم و نه افغانستان بعد از طالب سقوط میکرد.
This is an issue that can be further considered by the scholars in this field. But what I'm suggesting is if the United States had invested only a small portion of what they invested in Afghanistan and war efforts into culture, we would not be dealing with the Taliban right now.
وقتی که در بن نشستی به خاطر افغانستان صورت میگیره، حکومت جدید به حمایت جامعه جهانی به خصوص امریکا ساخته میشه، اصلاً بحث فرهنگ کنار میگذارن.
When there was a summit in Bonn, Germany, in which such negotiations were happening, the issue of culture and art was completely neglected.
همچنان در دور دوم گفتگویی که امریکایی‌ها، حکومت امریکا با طالبان داشتن، اصلاً به اون حرفی خانم همیرا قادری هیچ توجهی برای هنرمندا و برای فرهنگی‌ها نشد. هیچ ردی پای از فرهنگی‌ها و هنرمندا در این بحث‌ها، در این گفتگوها داخل نبود.
In the second round of negotiations, and to further reinforce the statement made by Ms. Homeira Qaderi, there was absolutely no consideration of art and women in such negotiations.
به نظر من به مو اندازه‌ای که افغان‌ها یک شکست تلخ چشیدن و این رو در یک حالت سردرگمی، یک حالت نابسامانی، یک حالت بدبختی سپری میکنن، به مو انداز برآمدن امریکا از افغانستان اعتماد امریکا، حکومت امریکا را در میان حکومت‌های دیگر ضربه زد.
At this current state, the defeat and the devastation and the bitter devastation that the people of Afghanistan had to suffer in the recent times have been endured, but what it has led to and the consequences have led to the mistrust towards the United States to now be part of a list of other countries that could have been more trusted but can't be after the way that they left our country.
I know. Excuse me, sir. Now, I must ask Mr. Omaid, and then people will ask you more questions.
Okay.
Because otherwise we will, bet. We are going to be late, but we'll be later. Yes, please. Hi, my friend. Have you forgotten the question by now?
No, I don't. It's a very, very
thank you
difficult
very
question.
much, sir. Yeah.
Very difficult question to respond to, Homi. I think Let me start by saying, when I was going to school, middle school and then high school, most of our education curriculum, and especially our math books, when I was learning like plus and times and stuff like that. So imagine it was like 2 + 2 is 4, but my math book was 2 guns plus 2 guns is 4 guns, and you can kill 4 Soviet soldiers with that. And most of the books I studied with were heavily encouraging to get gun and fight and kill the infidels. And to your surprise, these books were paid by USAID and made by the University of Nebraska. So that
Did you hear that?
One part of the problem. Poverty, another part of the problem. It's an elephant in the room. We have been a poor country for a very long time. Education, the majority of Afghanistan, they can't even read and write, let alone being open-minded in education. Religion, another big problem. Nobody talks about it, but we have significantly failed against religion and the mullahs and the Sharia law and the way they interpret it. King Amanullah failed against the religion because of the religion, and it continues. So why Americans left and why we are in this state? There are so many reasons. The madrasas in Pakistan, the radicalization, my school books, the poverty, lack of education, and all of that. So here we are. After many, many years of failed state, a lot of people who are immigrants or refugees, a population which is starving. Imagine all of you in this room. You have sisters, you have daughters. Imagine your boy goes to school, but he still studies 9 Islamic subjects, and your daughter cannot go to school. What is your response to them? Or your wife cannot go to work, or they cannot go to the public park, or even to the public hammams that we have. Imagine that. The beautiful half of Afghanistan is in prison. So that is the reality of today. And unfortunately, it would need a multi-layered, multi-dimensional efforts, not from Afghans only, as we made a lot of mistakes as well, but from regional countries, from the countries like the United States and everybody else, to really find a solution, because we have to think in a way that is about solutions, not the problems anymore, because we have significant, huge problems. And hopefully, I think this time is a reset for all of us to really think about this and come up with some creative ways to deal with it.
These have been some of the most remarkable responses, and you have enlightened us, I have to say, with the everyday texture of what happened to you. Now you have to leave at 4:30, is that right? Okay, so I think we should have a few questions if you can wait for 5 or 10 minutes. But before we do that, I said at the beginning that I was not keen on the introductory ritual. But there is another ritual in my country amongst my people, which is we never do anything for the first time together without offering sweets. So these are some sweets for you. This is my favorite sweet from India.
Thank you.
What is it? Son halwa.
Biswa.
Please, pass it around. Not many, I only had few at home, but okay.
What happens to me, Homi?
Omaid is feeling left out.
Here you go. Oh. Yeah, Omaid, Paris has got nothing on this, actually.
That your shirt in Paris reads Kabul Jan, which means lover of Kabul.
And now, after your performance here, we all love you too. All right. A few questions from the audience. Ma'am, you've already asked one, but I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to take a couple of others. Yes.
This is a question for Homeira. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how your books were understood, responded to by men versus women in Kabul and in Afghanistan, in Herat and elsewhere.
Writing for me it's never be easy. For the first time, how I started to write is maybe very interesting for you. And the first time Taliban conquered Herat, we 4 girls from Herat sitting together and think how we can write and how we can express our feeling and our emotion. We had a class under the name of the Golden Needle, a sewing circuit. This name, many years later, became the name of the book of Christina Lamb, very famous journalist in UK. And in this class, we were supposed to learn sewing, but because the Taliban had problem with the pen and not sewing, so we learned to write a story under the monitor of the very young man who was no mahram for us at those times. And so writing for me always faced with a lot of barriers in Afghanistan, but with my books that was translated in English and published here, I had faced with 2 groups of people. One, the group of men and women, the new generation and educated people that they really love this book. I have seen in the streets of Kabul, like the people sell potato and onion, they sell my book. So there were many generations that they like, and they copied that book illegally and sell in the streets of Kabul. But at the same time, there were many men, especially men, and also women who didn't like this book because I think I can say that my book was the first memoir in Afghanistan. Because in Afghanistan, when you, the definition of good for a woman means that the woman should be silent. And when you are more silent, it means you are more a good woman. So I wasn't a good woman for that culture, for many women, for many people. So many of them stoned me, not with the real stone, but they wrote a lot in the media against me. Because I told them, sorry, I use this word because I don't have any alternative. My English is very, has a limit. And it was like I put a man in front of the mirror, in front of himself as a naked man, and they didn't like themselves. They hate themselves. They saw themselves very clearly through all of my suffering and my problem. So I can say I'm grateful to my nation, to my people, because many of them, even the Ministry of Culture had a launch for an English book, not a Farsi book, English book in the Ministry of Culture in Afghanistan. And they give me very big gift because of my book. But there was many people that they didn't like me. And I remember in the first round table after the Taliban conquered Afghanistan in 2021, because I was there for 2 times, one of the mullah came to TV and said, yes, this government, the previous government, was belong to people who used to dance in the mosque. And they just judged me by the cover, really, literally by the cover. So I had problem, and there were many people, they liked this book, and also some people who try to stone me. But I am here alive.
Yes, please. In your art, you are heroes. Thank you, Madam Translator. You did great. Over there at business school, good professors like Theron teach us there's risk and there's return. So given alternatives, how much risk do you want to take? Do you think in that way, or do you say my art is my art? I don't care what the risk is. I'm going to do it.
Sorry.
I'm trying to like read the equation.
It was a question.
Yeah, it's a question. How much are you willing, now you live here, or at least for a while, but if you were when you were in Afghanistan, how much were you willing to risk your art, even if your life was in danger?
تمامی فعالیت‌های هنری را که ما در افغانستان داشتیم، از جشنواره ها تا خلق آثار تا برگزاری نمایشگاه ها، همه از اینها در تضاد با فکر طالبا بود، یعنی در تضاد با ایدئولوژی طالب بود. طالب یک گروه بنیادگر، یک گروه بیسواد، یک گروه ضد همه ارزش هاست. واقعا ما هر روز در پهلوی ما انفجاری صورت می گرفت، هر روز در کشور ما ترور می شد. برادر مرا به قتل رساندن، اما ما 14 سال این خطر قبول کردیم و فیلم ساختیم. بعد از حاکمیت طالبا اگر ما نمی برآمدیم، آل سر قبر ما این قدر سبزه بود.
Okay, translation please.
Every day was opposition. Right next to us, there were explosions happening. My own brother was murdered. And yet we accepted this risk for 14 years. And if we or I had stayed in Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover, people would be putting flowers at my grave right now.
Wow. Well, this is not even about art and risk. This is about risk and risk. Yes, my friend, what about you? Omaid.
I think both of our panelists have mentioned the risks involved in doing what we did. I want to mention at least 3 members of ArtLords was killed in the last 8 years. 24 years old, Natasha Fatima Khalil, which was also my sister-in-law, 24 years old, was working with ArtLords. She was killed in an explosion in her car, targeted. Rawil Singh, our co-founder, was killed in an explosion in Nangarhar. Fatima Mohammadi, the last 21 years old artist, which was killed in July 2021. She was an artist with ArtLords and also working for the Afghan fell. So that's just one example of how many lives lost. Risks were severe. I've always said it in my interviews. Most of us were not sure when we were getting out of our houses. We had to change our vehicles. We had to change our places that we were living, our offices, all of that. And I think it's completely different, insanely different when we're talking about it, because no person insane mind will go through all of these risks and then stay there and then continue the work. But somehow we are resilient, although I hated this about us, but we were so resilient. And we were hopeful a bit. At the same time, we also felt a bit of responsibility. If I am not doing it today, who will do it? Because that kind of responsibility never leaves me, at least. It doesn't let me sleep at nights, because I think I have to do more. I have to be one more voice. I have to evacuate one more person, or I have to do one more mural. Maybe it will be, we will find a solution. So all of that has been part of our life since we were born until I was evacuated. That has been part of my life, and I'm just one example of thousands and millions of Afghans who were not lucky. Either they were killed or they are still imprisoned in Afghanistan. I was the lucky one who survived, but with a lot of trauma, depression, and anxiety, and all of that.
Thank you for a deeply moving response. Yes, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, thank you very much, first of all, to everyone, and to you, for your moderation. My question is that where can we go from here? The questions you've raised are enormous, and particularly, it's so beautifully said, art and politics are 2 sides of the same thing, they're inseparable. You yourself said in one of my favorite essays of yours, the spaces in between cultures, that's where one has to find
the space to find the dialogue. It's that space that's somehow been missing. And I would like to ask, well, I think maybe even before that, we should remember that as brave as all of these wonderful artists and the other Afghans sitting here have been, every Afghan will tell you that they are only brave because their parents were brave. They were the ones that stand behind them. And behind them was another generation. And these generations built the culture in every one of these fields that goes back 1,000 years and more. There's a great culture in Afghanistan that the American people don't even know exists. They think everyone in Afghanistan are mujahideen, are terrorists. The positive side is that America did a lot of damage, and we can talk about that. But all of these people are here today because of Scholars at Risk and Harvard who finances. And Jane, of course, who does the work. but we have been, in other words, as much damage as we've done is now a time also to try to move forward in a positive way. And I would ask the Mittal Institute to consider going forward on a full symposium exactly on the themes that Homi Bhabha proposed and that our artists so well articulated, because the culture of Afghanistan is its strength. The culture is what created all of this art. They have the courage to do it and to survive it, but it's the culture that stands behind them that created it. And until the Mittal Institute came, because I was a student here for many years, the community knew nothing about the history of Afghanistan, of Pakistan, a little bit of India, but there's so much more to tell. And if it's only when we learn it, we can understand how we can begin to negotiate. I'm sorry to keep quoting you, but in that space in between, in these cultures, so that we can appreciate each other and build something better. So if we could all, you're the only person who can do it. There's no other institution. So there's no other institution at Harvard.
Right. So I plan now to close the symposium on those beautiful words. You don't give us, you can't give us hope, but what Adorno called disappointed hope in a positive way, that hope is always in suspension. You have to work for it. You will be disappointed. It'll disappoint you. That's only the place for another form of hope to emerge. And now, of course, we're all in very, very different situations. But disappointed hope is the note on which most societies today have to live. And there is a great risk that we face. But we thank you for teaching us how to work, how to think, and how to survive risk in your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Homi, for your usual expert moderation, and thank you to our artist colleagues, Homeira, Samiullah, and Omaid. Very, very kind of you to participate and very courageous, and we all deeply respect you and honor your efforts in as many ways as possible. And to the admonition that was just delivered in the last few minutes, we're a platform, so we're always available for people to try and pull this together. All we need is a cabal of interested people who are willing to put their, what's the right phrase, intellectual shoulders to the wheel, if that's an appropriate turn of phrase, to get things going. And then, we have an expert team, Hitesh and company, who can run with pretty much anything. But it remains for me, we're a little bit over time, so I apologize for that. It's Homi's fault, not mine.
Always.
But Homi knows it's always Homi's fault.
Always.
It's always Homi's fault. But thank you all for, several of you have been here since for the entire symposium. Others have come and gone, but we appreciate everybody participating in these many conversations, going back to the lovely evening we had yesterday with Madhur Jaffrey and Abhijit. Really quite entertaining as a starting point for this. To this morning, the wonderfully courageous women from Seva who came all the way and led us in song at the end, to the more academic Lancet Commission, to our student associates regaling us with a very wide spectrum of research, very encouraging research in different fields, and to this, again, extraordinary display of courage at the end of the day. But thank you to everybody, and please stay connected in as many ways as possible. And could we just end with a little bit of applause for the team who have really worked untold hours.
With your permission, Homeira wants to say
2-3 sentences.
2 sentences.
Just before you do, I just want to say, I forgot to introduce Jana, who wanted to remain in the background, but thank you so much for translating. It was really wonderful.
I wanted to say thank you, a big thank you to you. I know just Sulaiman, the person who always answered me patiently. Thank you so much. You bring the issue of Afghanistan, because after the Ukraine war, the war that we respect to it, Afghanistan history totally have forgotten, and you bring it up. Thank you so much. But one thing your friend said, what we can do between, the only things right now, maybe one of, not the only thing, is to don't allow, because I know many movies and many books, some of them published, and many movies will come out soon about Afghanistan from Hollywood or be published. Please don't allow to modify the history of war for you. Don't allow to feed your ego. Please go for the real truth in Afghanistan or all of the country when the USA had a big impact on their countries. Thank you so much.